Freedom, liberty, equality, cigarettes. These concepts were all synonymous in the 1920s. Women increasingly sought equality in the voting booth, at the office, and at home during the First World War. And smoking was a piece of that cause. But these torches of freedom aren't what they seem. Really, it was all just a trick, a secret PR campaign on behalf of the American Tobacco Company. In the early 20th century, women smoking was taboo, seen as the actions of a fallen woman or just a straight-up prostitute. It was said smoking by women in North America and Europe had long been associated with loose morals and dubious sexual behavior. This stigma kept the number of women smokers incredibly low, and on top of the shaming, cities passed laws stating women could no longer smoke in public. Those that did partake were socially rebellious, or they were doing so in the privacy of their own homes. Now, at the same time, there was a man by the name of George Washington Hill that sat on a pile of money, but apparently he needed an even bigger pile of money, and yes, you could not draw a more villainous looking tobacco executive. He was the head of sales for the American Tobacco Company, and sales were up. Men were smoking at record numbers due to previous marketing campaigns depicting cigarettes as both manly and rugged. World War I was a big boost as well due to cigarettes being included in the military ration. But ultimately, men are only half of the population, and Hill saw this as an opportunity. It'll be like opening a gold mine right in our front yard, Hill said, searching for a way to increase profits by drilling into this untapped market. But women weren't smoking, and if they were doing it while hiding in the house. He needed it to be out in the open, so each cigarette-toting woman would serve as a walking billboard for tobacco, specifically to make other women feel comfortable breaking the current taboo. A major topic during the 1920s was women's rights, and this was the period right after World War I. While men were overseas fighting, women had to pick up the slack back home, and since they were now doing the same work, they expected the same rights. This era energizing the feminist movement. But, like you so often see today, brands co-opt social movements to sell products, and George Washington Hill was seeing dollar signs. And also going on during this time, the new field of psychoanalysis had been founded by Sigmund Freud. This new way of thinking created a clinical method for evaluating and treating pathologies in the psyche. Hill spoke with a contemporary of Freud, a psychoanalyst by the name of A.A. Brill. George Washington Hill was trying to understand the psychological stigma attached to women and cigarettes. Because if he could break these social norms, he could then exploit these thought processes to sell his latest brand of cancer-causing tobacco. A.A. Brill stated, "Today the emancipation of women has suppressed many of their feminine desires. More women now do the same work as men do. Many women bear no children. Those who do bear have fewer children. Feminine traits are masked. Cigarettes, which are equated with men, become torches of freedom." And there it is, torches of freedom. That's the pitch. George Washington Hill hired the father of propaganda, Edward Bernays. Bernays was paid a sum of $25,000 to launch the campaign. Edward Bernays is the nephew of Sigmund Freud, and he also pioneered the field of public relations, specifically by hacking people's conscious and subconscious belief systems in order to get them to achieve whatever aim Bernays was hired on behalf of. A famous Bernays quote reads, "The conscious and intelligent manipulation of the organized habits and opinions of the masses is an important element in democratic society." And here's a couple of Bernays' greatest hits. "Bacon and eggs is the true all-American breakfast. If you believe breakfast is the most important meal of the day, old Eddie B got you." On behalf of the United Fruit Company, Bernays launched a campaign that overthrew a democratically elected president of Guatemala in 1954. And that's where the term Banana Republic comes from. And the company responsible for overthrowing Guatemala is now known today as Chiquita. And here's another weird one. Kids didn't like soap back in the day. They didn't like to bathe. On Procter & Gamble's dime, Bernays launched soap carving competitions aimed at children, basically turning soap into a kind of toy in the mind of children. And now kids across the US were happy to take baths, with Procter & Gamble's Ivory soap, of course. But one of Bernays' best works was for Lucky Strike. Understanding that torches of freedom would be his rallying cry, he set out to make cigarettes serve as symbols of equality, of female empowerment. Since men can smoke, women can too, damn it. In 1929, Bernays was hard at work rigging public perception. He was careful in selecting women for the campaign, stating they had to be pretty so other women would want to follow, but not too beautiful as it could be intimidating and unrelatable. He contacted 30 debutantes from a friend at Vogue magazine, what today would equate to your modern Instagram influencer. Their aim was to march for equality, while also fighting the prejudice against cigarettes. During the Easter Day parade in New York City, the women marched down Fifth Avenue smoking cigarettes, with prominent feminists feminist at the time, Ruth Hale, shouting, "Women, light another torch of freedom, fight another sex taboo." Many were shocked, and of course newspapers picked up the story immediately. The New York Times front page the next day read, "Group of girls puff at cigarettes as a gesture of freedom." The papers had crystal clear photos of the women smoking, but that was because Bernays had hired his own photographers to cover the event. Marches would spread to other major cities like Boston, Detroit, and San Francisco. The ruse had worked, and now smoking women were increasingly viewed as liberated, self-reliant, free, and George Washington Hill's subversive marketing campaign doubled women smokers from 5% to 12% in the late 1920s. Through the years, cigarettes marketed towards women had various other approaches. They'll make you skinny, they can help with your cough, but none as successful as Bernays' initial strategy. Even 65 years later, 1990s tobacco execs brought back the torches of freedom concept, selling cigarettes as a sign of upward mobility, equality, and freedom in progressive nations. Bernays later, in a biography about his life, reflected, "Age-old customs, I learned, could be broken down by a dramatic appeal, disseminated by the network of media. Of course, the taboo was not destroyed completely, but a beginning had been made." Thanks for watching.